Today's video is sponsored by Paperlike, which makes drawing or writing on your iPad feel more like paper. Hey, it's Chris, and today we're talking about a device that I wasn't even sure I was going to like, but kind of ended up loving, actually. It's something that makes the iPad feel fun again to me and not just boring or expensive or expected. Now, I've had an iPad mini 4 laying around, and it wasn't an iPad that I relied on much because it was so outdated and slow. It's mostly just been sitting here on a stand in the studio so I can use it to look at scripts while I'm sitting in front of the camera. It was just too slow to do anything else, like even for just web surfing or watching YouTube. So my expectations for the 5 were kinda low. But then I got it, and I quickly changed my mind. All of a sudden, even though I own the 11-inch iPad Pro, I'm using it for all kinds of stuff. And my brain's just not really used to an iPad mini that isn't laggy. It turns out this size, plus the modern hardware inside, is a pretty awesome combination. I mean, if it can take any time away from me using the iPad Pro, that's really saying something. So today's video is gonna be pretty straightforward. I'm gonna talk about all the good stuff first, then I'm gonna talk about what's bad, and then I'm gonna end with some recommendations on who I think should end up buying this, along with whether or not I'm gonna keep it and use it. Also, I tried to build for myself what I would call a dream iPad mini setup, so you can check that out and all my mini accessories over at myslicedapple.com, and I'll also link it up down in the description. Okay, so the good stuff. There's a lot to like here, despite the first impressions that you might have formed when you just laid eyes on this thing for the first time. The best thing about this is its size, hands down. Not the price, not anything else, just the size. I mean, this thing weighs under a pound. It feels light as air, which, yeah, you can basically refer to this as the iPad Air Mini since it has the same internals as the new Air. But it's so light, it's just like holding nothing. That smallness is awesome because there isn't a phone this big and there isn't a laptop or other iPad this small. So it really does hit the sweet spot, and that sweet spot means that I've been wanting to take it with me everywhere. Let me tell you about one of my favorite things about this iPad mini. It's the handheld typing experience, basically the thumb typing. There's something about the size and holding it vertically that makes typing just work good. It's way more comfortable than typing on your iPhone's keyboard, and it's also way better than typing on the Pro's on-screen keyboard. Don't ask me why you can do a split-screen keyboard on the Mini and not on the Pro. It doesn't make sense, I know. The iPad mini size makes it great for consuming media, that's obvious. So whether you're reading articles or books or watching YouTube videos, the mini is just great. And I want to note here too, I'm really glad that I can use this cover as a stand again because as a Pro owner, there is no stand mode anymore. You just get stuck with that keyboard always sticking out. So I'm really enjoying this old school stand. Now, while the size is great for consuming, this almost seems weird to say, but it's actually pretty decent. I'm not just saying this, pretty decent for creating stuff too. Like, I'm really surprised. Before I used it, I thought the screen was gonna be way too small for handwritten notes or for typing, but it's actually pretty adaptable. Now, I wouldn't call it ideally suited to content creation, but I also wouldn't call it a disaster either. And it's not just me. I was really surprised as I was reading through some reviews how many other reviewers were basically trying to use it like a mini iPad Pro, whether they realized it or not. And actually, I think I'm gonna end up doing a video comparing the Mini and the Pro just for fun. So let me know if that's something that you wanna see. Now, I ran into one review where they were trying to say that they didn't even know if the Mini's size was even valuable today because phone screens have just gotten so much bigger. But I would say it absolutely has value today. There are several things that I would rather do on this Mini than on my XS Max giant iPhone. Like for each video I create, I do a lot of research and I love reading articles and highlighting and making notes in them in Instapaper on the Mini. I've also been exploring the new Apple News Plus subscription on the Mini, and some of the article layouts are really different than just plain text articles, and it's so much better to see the images on a bigger screen than even on my XS Max. Also, watching video on the Mini is so much better than on my iPhone, whether it's YouTube or Netflix or the soon-to-be released Apple TV+. Websites also load a lot bigger on the Mini versus the iPhone. I mean, there's really just no comparison. And there's 3 apps that I've really been using lately when I create content, which is Bear, the Notes app, Notability, the handwriting notes app, and MindNote for mind mapping, which are all much, much better to use on the Mini versus the iPhone. So I think it's ridiculous to say that bigger phones have made this size pointless. Now, it's big news that this little iPad mini now supports the Apple Pencil. Here's a quick side story. When I was in grade school, I was just known for like amazing handwriting. And then over the years, as all I did was type, I sort of lost that. I didn't do much handwriting anymore. It was just emails and notes and whatever, just typing. But in the last year, I've really been getting back into handwriting stuff because you just think differently. It's a little bit slower, more thought out when you're handwriting something versus just typing it out really quickly. And so being able to carry that over onto the iPad mini and do some more handwriting there is great. Unfortunately, the mini only works with the old original Apple Pencil, and there's plenty to dislike about it. The new Apple Pencil that the iPad Pros use is smaller, it's easier to hold, and it's got magnetic and wireless charging, not to mention an extra button. While the original Apple Pencil feels really slippery, almost greasy, it rolls around all over the place, and it charges in the dumbest possible way. The good news, though, is that the original Apple Pencil is actually still very usable. It's easy to complain about, but it really does work just fine. I've actually really enjoyed making handwritten notes using Notability on the new Mini. The smaller screen hasn't meant that it's too hard to write on, but what's actually happened is that my writing is just bigger in the note itself, versus if I had written it on the iPad Pro, which really isn't a big deal at all. Oh, and by the way, if you missed my recent video on good notes versus Notability and you're looking for the best handwriting notes app for the iPad, you should check it out. I'll leave a link down below. Now, thanks to the Apple Pencil support, you can even do some sketching or artwork here on the Mini. Now, I would say, personally, it's probably more suited to like handwritten notes or marking up PDFs or maybe doing some photo retouching, that kind of stuff, than it is for drawing. But both are a lot more doable than you would think. And I should also mention that other Bluetooth styluses should work with the Mini as well. I haven't tested any, but that's good news for anyone looking to save a little money versus using the Apple Pencil, which unfortunately hasn't dropped in price. Speaking of price, this iPad starts at $399, which I would call a big plus, and which means this is no longer the entry-level iPad. The regular iPad starts at $70 cheaper, but the Mini has better performance. Remember, it shares the same internals as the new iPad Air. Of course though, if you want to add an Apple Pencil, a keyboard, and a cover or stand like I've got here, then things do start to add up. Again, I'm gonna link up my accessories over on mysliceapple.com, but this setup brought the total price for me up to around $600. Still, the iPad Air starts at $100 more than the Mini, and the 11-inch Pro starts at $800. I mean, if you really wanted to or needed to, you could use the Mini to do a lot of what you might do on a bigger iPad for quite a bit cheaper. Okay, let's talk about performance next. And I mean, I can't even tell you how much of a difference it's night and day between the Mini 4 and this Mini 5. On the old one, I mean, just opening it, just unlocking it, just launching an app, it was like excruciating because it was so slow. The thing's so old now. But the new one has completely fixed all those performance issues. So the Mini 5 has the same A12 Bionic chip as the iPhone XR and the XS. And in the real world, this means that apps download, open, and run very quickly. It also means that this little Mini can handle top-tier games like Fortnite or Civilization 6 or even Elder Scrolls Blades, which is a major new release that was announced at E3 last year. The Mini is also perfectly capable of doing some photo editing in an app like Darkroom, which is my current favorite for raw image editing, and I think the Pencil works really great in this situation. Augmented reality, or AR, always requires a lot of power to work well, and the Mini is actually up to that challenge too. Although, to be honest, AR really hasn't caught on yet. Bring on the Apple AR glasses, please! Even though the display is so small, there's enough power to multitask here with ease. You can easily have 3 apps open at once with absolutely no problems, which looks kind of funny, but hey, it works. The new iPad mini has a great screen. It's an LCD display, and Apple makes great LCDs, which has wider color support, and it's laminated. Now, the fact that this is laminated makes a huge difference. It's awesome. Just 10 minutes ago, I was using another iPad, which is actually right above the camera, that I use as a monitor for when I'm on camera. It has a big gap, and it was driving me nuts. So not having a gap means that when you either use your finger or the Apple Pencil, it feels like you're touching the pixels. So the screen also has a respectable 500 nits of brightness, which I like because for me, brighter is always better, always. And iOS 12 is also very good on here. Well, for the most part. Talk about that in a second. It's smooth, it's capable, and it's great for a tablet that isn't trying to be anything other than a tablet. People often fault iOS 12 on the iPad Pros because they feel like that's what's holding it back versus all that beautiful hardware. But the iPad mini doesn't have to worry about any of that because it's not being billed as a laptop replacement. Even though, like I said, a lot of people are gonna try, and it's not the craziest thing in the world. The last great thing I wanna mention here in the good category is the battery life, which Apple rates at 10 hours, but that's probably a classic Apple undersell. I've seen plenty of people reporting that they've been getting more like 11 hours. Now, I'm a really heavy iPad user, so I may not be the best person to go by. I've ended up charging mine every night because I'll get it down to 20 or 30% by the end of the day, which is not enough to get me through the next day. But if you're a light user, you might only need to charge it like every 3 days or so. As you can see, there's a lot to like about the new Mini 5, but it's definitely far from perfect. We're gonna talk next about the stuff that detracts from its appeal, starting with that really ancient design. This is a 7-year-old design now, and it looks really out of date. It's weird because this is literally a modern classic in that it's very modern on the inside and very classic on the outside. I mean, the old Mini came out several years ago, and this time I had to buy a different color for this review just so I could tell them apart. That's nuts. I mean, these bezels are just enormous, and it's 2019. And I hate to say this, but it just doesn't look very cool. Like, you don't want to roll up to the coffee shop or the boardroom or school with this, kinda. Here's a picture that I just can't get out of my head. Like, what if this iPad mini with this size had the bezels and the design, the new design language of the iPad Pros? That would be amazing. I mean, I think there would be a legitimate buying frenzy if Apple were to release that. Ah well, moving on. If you're an iPhone user or if you've used an iPad Pro, there are some things that are missing here that you have to unlearn or that might drive you nuts. There's no Face ID, which I miss in the worst way. There's no gesture navigation, which also breaks my brain now that I'm used to it. And I mean, I have to double tap here to multitask. It's driving me insane. Something else you might find annoying is having to use a Bluetooth keyboard if you want to get any work done, which apparently lots of people do, mini screen size and all. I mean, you always have to remember to turn off your Bluetooth keyboard in order to get your on-screen keyboard back, and you have to charge and pair it. They're okay, they're usable, it's just not ideal. The cameras on the iPad mini, one of which has been updated, they're just not very good. Like, they're not very usable. Don't use them unless you have to. That's what you can expect. The only thing they're really gonna be good enough for is FaceTime, which, that's okay. You don't need something amazing for FaceTime. As good as the display is at this price point, there's one thing that's missing, and that's ProMotion, the technology that gives you up to a 120 Hz refresh rate. Fortunately though, if you're interested in this mini, the ProMotion is cool, but it's not something I think you're gonna be crying about missing right here. One thing that may bug you though is that they included a pretty slow charger in the box. You're stuck with this 12-watt charger, which, dang, it would have been nice to get something a little bit faster. Finally, I also listed the size as a potential bad thing as well, even though I just spent several minutes raving about how awesome it was. Some things just don't look or work as good on a smaller screen, like the dock icons in vertical mode. They're tiny. It's actually pretty funny how small they get. And some sites or apps load mobile versions that just look kind of awkward as well. Check out today's sponsor, Paperlike, which is an accessory that makes it feel and sound like you're writing on real paper when you're using an Apple Pencil. Paperlike actually gives you more control when you're writing or drawing thanks to the paper-like resistance that it offers, and yeah, it really makes a big difference. Plus, it reduces glare, and thank goodness, fingerprints as well. Paperlike is great for anyone who uses apps like Notability or Procreate, and when you place an order, you'll get 2 Paperlike covers plus application accessories with free worldwide shipping and a 100% satisfaction guarantee. And you can pick one up using the link down in the description. So who should be buying this iPad mini? Well, I think just people who want a second device, that's a no-brainer. I think travelers could really like this because think about when you're using this on the tray and somebody leans back in the plane, this is gonna get smashed a lot less than your laptop or a bigger iPad. I don't know about you guys, I never recline in the seat because I feel like I need to be considerate of the people behind me because I hate it when somebody reclines onto my stuff. Also, people who might be looking for a cheaper iPad Pro alternative. Not a replacement, but technically a workable / usable alternative. And also, people who aren't self-conscious of popping into the spot with this old design. So you might be wondering, now that the review is over, am I, as a reviewer, still gonna keep using this iPad mini? And the answer is definitely. I've gotten really attached to this thing. In fact, my iPad Pro has been spending more time on the desk because wherever I go to do stuff, this is easier to grab and I just take it with me. Here's what it all comes down to though. At the end of the day, despite the ugly old design, this is a truly great size for an iPad with truly great performance, and that is a killer combo. Hey, thanks for watching today. I would love to know what you think of the iPad mini. Leave me a comment down below. Let me know, are you picking it up? Are you not? Why do you love it? Why do you hate it? You can also connect with me on Instagram and Twitter. I'm at Daily Tech, spelled Daily T-E-K-K on both of those platforms. And if you're looking for another iPad-related video to cruise into, continue this iPad binge that you're on, then check out my video on the apps that make the iPad Pro worth owning, because there's a lot of stuff that's a crossover that could apply here as well. And I'll catch you guys in the next video. Later.